I just want to start off by introducing myself. I'm Victoria Gudino, and I'm the Communications Manager at the Louisiana Policy Institute for Children. LPIC is a nonpartisan, nonprofit, independent source of data, research, and information for policymakers and stakeholders on issues related to early children education for young children aged birth through 4 in Louisiana. I am delighted to introduce Crystal Ellis of Save the Children Action Network, our host for this evening. Save the Children Action Network is a political advocacy arm of Save the Children. They work across the U.S. to ensure that our elected leaders give top priority to issues critical to children's lives and their futures. And so, without further ado, Crystal, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Victoria. Good evening, everyone. As Victoria stated, I am Crystal Ellis. I am the Louisiana State Manager for Save the Children Action Network, and I am joined today by two of my volunteer leaders, Daphne Chapman and Tia Fields. Victoria told you a little bit about what SCAN does. We are a grassroots activism organization that works to engage candidates and legislators and community members throughout the state to advance policy on behalf of young children and families. Our volunteers consist of parents, caregivers, educators, and students across the country advocating to make a difference in the lives of kids. Here in Louisiana, we have multiple constituency programs to include our family engagement program, which is located where our U.S. programs exist in St. Landry, Jeff Davis, and Evangeline parishes. In addition to that, we have a student club on Southern University's campus here in Baton Rouge. And then we have community action teams currently existing in the Baton Rouge area and in northern Louisiana, primarily Mansfield, Louisiana.
Will begin during the legislative session. Our Capitol correspondent, Alexis Kearney, has details on how this budget could impact you.
Michael, experts say this budget was frankly boring.
I'm not sure who's unmuted at this moment, but if you aren't speaking, would you mind muting yourself? So my first question for you this evening is, what is advocacy? Advocacy is taking action to create change. So let me preface this training by sharing that I myself am a parent. I am a mother and stepmother to 8 children. And it took me some time to learn the difference between complaint and advocacy. And that difference is taking action. What can I do to advocate? So for the sake of tonight's presentation, what you can do to advocate is guided by your lived experiences. Parents and caregivers can advocate for increased investment to expand access to early childhood education. And where do you start? But where you start is initially to get informed. So you can all pat yourselves on the back for joining this evening's training, because this is where it starts. You become knowledgeable on the issues that you're advocating for. You volunteer. You volunteer with organizations such as Save the Children Action Network and Louisiana Policy Institute for Children, who do work through the Ready Louisiana Coalition and the Go Far Coalition. We'll talk more about coalitions in a moment. And I'm going to say, excuse me for any background noise, because again, I'm a mother of 8 and life doesn't stop on my end because I'm hosting a training in the evening. Advocacy through campaigns. Campaigns are organized movements with coordinated activities designed to influence targets and achieve policy goals. These can be federal campaigns, state and electoral campaigns, even local campaigns when you're dealing with your school board or your metro council. But ultimately, it's organized movements with coordinated activities designed to influence targets and achieve policy goals. So we're going to break down different ways that you can advocate for policy change. And to begin, we're going to start with grassroots organizing. So grassroots comes in different ways. First, by community awareness campaigns, and there's a number of ways to do that. For us at SCAN, it looks like participating in local events to educate the public about the importance of early education and how to get involved. That's tabling local events, that's showing up to different community events and passing out flyers. that may look like partnering with local early ed facilities and coming in to do educational trainings with their faculty, staff, and family members. Coalition building, such as what we do with Go Far and Ready Louisiana. That's partnering with local organizations, educators, and businesses to form a united front that can push for policy change. But there is power in numbers. So when you're building coalition, you're building capacity and people power. Parent and caregiver mobilization, organizing other parents, caregivers, and community members to get involved with early education advocacy. So I am a firm believer at SCAN that we do like a +2 for everything that we organize. So if we're having an upcoming event and I invite my volunteer leaders, my expectation is that they invite 2 people and those 2 people subsequently invite 2 more. So it's recruiting other parents, caregivers, and community members to get involved with advocacy. Another huge aspect of policy advancement is communications. Targeted media outreach. So you're engaging with local journalists by writing op-eds. Who here has ever written a letter to the editor? If we haven't written a letter to the editor, you guys have just told me what our next training is, because a letter to the editor is a really good way to engage your community on the issues that are important to you. So you write into your local media, for example, the Advocate, and you write the editor and you let them know what's important to you, why it's important to you, and what actions you feel should be taken in support of that cause. Social media, amplifying content from trusted sources. When you're visiting the Capitol and you're speaking to legislators, it's not only important to know data and to know the numbers, but to also be able to put a personalized experience and attach it to it. I know for me, I spent the majority of my adult life as a single parent, and I put three children through early childhood education programs, and I can speak to the exorbitant cost that I was challenged with as a single mother, and having 2 in childcare at the same time, and being able to, at the time living in the lower Ninth Ward of New Orleans, being able to access quality childcare in close proximity to me, often challenged with barriers of transportation. When I train my advocates through Save the Children Action Network, I always say to them, when you have an opportunity to speak in front of a legislator or a decision maker, the personal story is what they're going to remember, right? Because they get data from people all day, every day, and you can always leave behind a document that gives them the data. But it's your compelling story that's going to captivate them, that's going to capture their attention and make them want to learn more about what you're speaking on. Another key element of advancing policy is elections, because it's important to make sure that we are engaging candidates to find out if they really care about children. You would be surprised how many people run for office and don't. And working to elect candidates that will work in the best interest of children in early childhood education. So the ways that you can engage elections, first and foremost, which I feel is the most important, is voter outreach and education, because we don't elect people unless people actually go to the polls. So informing parents, caregivers, and community members about the importance of voting for candidates that'll champion early education is key. But then, and y'all check the photo out because it's a really big deal to me, but engaging candidates. And we call that bird dogging. And bird dogging is when you ask questions to get candidates on record. So with Save the Children Action Network, we attend town halls or meetings where candidates are giving their spiel on why they should be elected. And we ask questions focused on early childhood education so that we can get a response and hold them accountable to their response. So we'll often go in, ask a question, they'll answer, we'll capture a photo that says, I was here, because we all know it didn't happen if you don't have a picture. We can post it to social media, recapping what our experience was and tagging them. And if they are really about what they say they're about, they'll either share it or respond. So we have them on record for what their stance is for early education. We are a C4 organization, so we have some capabilities that a regular advocacy organization doesn't have, and one of that is endorsements. And the way that we endorse is we support candidates that support kids. So we, aside from bird dogging, we send out questionnaires so we can capture what their responses are to our varying issues. And then we can select amongst candidates which ones we feel would champion our issues and support them in a number of ways. And then the fourth is engaging lawmakers. I know I keep saying that all of these are my most important, but this one is really important too, because whoever is seated in this moment has the power. And those are relationships that you have to build. So the way that you build relationships with lawmakers or engage lawmakers are attending legislative meetings and advocacy days. And meeting with legislators, you get an opportunity to speak directly to the elected official that's making the decision, and we call that lobbying. Sending messages to lawmakers, this can be done a number of ways. Some of the ways that we utilize at SCAN are sending postcards, emailing, making phone calls, one clicks. We all love a good one click. And if you don't know what a one click is, a one click is when advocacy organizations make it really easy for you. So they have these pre-drafted text messages or emails, and then they make it accessible to the general public through clicking on a button. So we send these out via email. And let me pause because I know a lot of us often get overwhelmed with the influx of emails that we receive or text messages that we receive from varying advocacy organizations, but don't overlook those because we make it easy for you. As parents, we can't always show up to the Capitol and we can't attend every meeting, but just as easy as it is for me to sit down and eat dinner, and in between bites, I can click on a button and send a message to a legislator because an advocacy organization made it easy for me. So you'll find those in emails, you'll find those in text messages, you'll find those on social media. And when you come across them, we've done the work for you. You click on it, you take a second to personalize it, and you hit send. And it's really impactful when a lawmaker can get 1,500 messages saying, we need you to invest in early education. Another opportunity to engage lawmakers is through public testimony. A lot of people, when you're at the Capitol, you also are testifying before legislators. That photo is a picture of my son, who was 12 years old at the time and testified in Senate Finance for early ed investment. And he was able to give his experience about what these programs have done for him and his family and how it significantly changed the trajectory of his life through having access, right? Because not only was it making him kindergarten ready by having access to an early ed program, it was allowing his mom, who was a single mother at the time, to be able to work and contribute to the economy. And I went from a struggling single mother, which I am not afraid to admit, to thriving because I had a trusted place to bring my children and know that they were being nurtured and that they were being educated. With advocacy organizations gives you the opportunity to take advantage of trainings. We train you to testify. You don't have to go in blind. I remember my first time ever testifying at the legislature and how nervous I was and feeling like I didn't say all the right things, but your message will resonate with somebody. This is a very general baseline for advocacy. There are a number of ways that we can train you on the intricate details of this, of advocacy strategy and tactics.
AOC is instructing.
And so with SCAN, we advocate in the state for early ed and food security. But our next upcoming one is focused on how to tailor your message to legislators to emphasize what their priorities are. When you're advocating, something super important is knowing how to speak the language of your audience, right? So you have to be able, especially when you're nonpartisan, to be able to speak to conservatives, fiscal conservatives who may not want to advance social services. But if you talk to them about what matters, for instance, instead of saying, I need childcare, you say, I need to work, because that's what's going to hit them. That's what they want to hear, right? And access to early education impacts so many things. Thank you, Victoria and LPIC, for welcoming Save the Children Advocacy Network into your network. And thank you to all who joined the call. We really appreciate you for taking time to learn how to advocate on behalf of children and families.